text or email.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, on the tree thing too, but I read that. Well, then one says.
Hey Sean, how are you?
Good.
Yeah, so
So,
I just wanted to.
Hello.
hey, this is Sam. He's our man.
I'm sorry, you're Zach, right?
Yeah.
Zach Mike, I'm sorry, I didn't say hello to you, I didn't recognize you.
No, you're good, Mike.
Sorry about that, man.
No,
He's the ugliest one here, how can you not know him?
I was focused on Wes, that's all I could see.
That's all right.
Sorry, Zach.
You're good.
I could do it on Zoom, but
And
we didn't put
so
his
I don't think
link
it
out
would have
there.
been part.
I mean, I could pull it up here, no problem, but people on YouTube are going to
Seeing
see
how
right
we
here.
incorporate them and kind of.
What?
I mean,
Can
you
we
can
point
hear
the
it.
camera
For the city council.
You can, it's awful far away. It's not that one, it's this one.
And then we'll get them involved with
That's
it.
what we use for.
So we'll be doing events and that stuff.
And on
so,
Zoom, I can share my screen and show it, but did you just want me to pull it up?
Well,
Sure.
like you said,
That slipped right out of my
there's no one straight.
So, what's your suggestion?
I don't know.
Change.
No, they can hear us,
So you're on the
they
committee,
can
right?
see us, but they're not gonna see his presentation. They can see that. Why is it not pulling
That
up?
view on that one, but.
Let's see what it looks like.
Okay, so what did you need?
Let's see how the PowerPoint looks. And
Okay.
sometimes the fonts come out weird depending on which computer. Oh, they're gonna be good, it looks
Okay.
like so.
So is that all we are planning on
That's all,
using?
yeah.
Okay. Do you want me to just save it and you can have your jump drive back?
Sure, that helps so I don't forget it.
Yep, that's exactly what I'm worried about. Okay. Why am I not seeing save? I don't know, does Lindsay usually have YouTube pulled up so you can see it?
So the things we talked about in the tree board, just, you know, Rusty delivered in there. No, why do you recommend do that? Or,
You know, for, in front of Jenny Stevens,
yeah.
he took care of the things she's working on. Seeing what she can.
So just those ones and then other places we talked about. And then,
I would give it
So can you see what it looks like? We like this one?
all the never picked him up one for ride, see what something's going on.
It's,
yeah, okay, I'll call Rusty coming up, because it sounded like we needed to get on it.
Yeah. Them others. I don't know what was gonna put where.
It's my husband Scott.
Hey.
Zach.
Hey.
He's a neighbor.
Yeah.
He lives on Main.
Go.
so I don't know.
Which one are you again?
So right up the hill past where there's the.
So if I'm going this way, you're on this side?
I'm on the north side. Good side of it. There's Best Realty, right? Know that? The green.
White
Can you-
building?
Yeah, so the big white house.
Okay.
You have 3 preset ones. One's the council. And we'll have to stop YouTube and start it again to do that.
I wanna sit in the corner. Can I sit in the corner? I mean,
Sure.
I guess.
We'll have to look at Zoom.
Now I'm gonna lean against the wall. Ooh.
We can color real quick, 'cause I think she does do.
She shares. You think she shares?
She's had a way to sort of.
Oh. I brought these to show you in.
How are you? Better than crappy. I'm definitely better than that.
That's good.
How are you?
How are you? Good.
With the snow.
Huh?
Snow.
I know, isn't that something?
Hey Brett, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Fantastic.
Good.
John, you know what the password is in here? How are you?
Good, how are you, Jordan?
Good.
67.
Capital?
Hey, how are you? Good, how are you?
be right next to it, huh?
Let me keep my coat on for a while.
I don't know.
Admin, yes.
Warm enough just in time to go back outside.
Right? Remember that one time we came?
The admin one worked, I guess.
Nothing. Like we came in and then we left. It was like during December. It was like an inch. It was crazy. Like when we came in here, it was like nothing.
I know. And then all of a sudden it just dumped over.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, how are you?
Oh, somebody told me, Brett, that you used me as an example at our work conference. They told me a couple of weeks ago. I'm like,
You sat in that chair, you got.
It was just simple. I just said that we can. I said if Penny was here, and I put my arm like I have my arm around you, and I said if Penny was here, we disagree on some things, but I still love her.
what do we disagree on?
Just different issues on, right? But it's like, and that's kind of what I've been trying to tell everyone. It's okay. It's healthy, actually.
It really is. Like, that's why, honestly, I mean, like, the one-party system doesn't work.
No.
As much as we hate
No.
one side or the other, you know.
So
And if this building doesn't cave in on the Republican caucus night tonight,
Do you want us all up here, or do we want?
the whole point is we just need to have healthy debates. We need to discuss. And I even said in our state presidency meetings, we
Project, I guess
on some have to come together. And sometimes it's like even in here, maybe the vote doesn't pass.
tonight's caucus.
City council, there's several times I voted to on something. It passes.
That's what I was just wondering if we wanted to try to be
hey,
out.
that's when we just wipe our hands clean, move on. I think it's just the way we all react to that, and and
Hey Penny, do you know when's the caucus meetings? What time? At 6?
but I just said if this building stays standing after the Republic.
Oh, is it gonna be rough or what? Like, I wasn't aware.
This Democrat.
No, I'm actually a Republican now.
Oh, you are?
So I could vote in the Republican primary.
Oh, welcome to God's country.
Because I really hope I don't.
So where's
die
the, is it at the high school?
I saw that.
The Republican, yeah. You guys all there?
I think that's why Roger was here tonight, because they were, Vince.
Republicans go?
I guess. I don't know.
Well,
You didn't know that?
I don't know what I am.
I've never been there. If you don't know what you are, you're definitely a Democrat.
What am I?
Yes.
Alright, what are you?
It's just really not a great place to be right now on either side. Best to just keep your head in the sand.
You're really aiming for a great place to be. You're aiming for policies that you can put your hand and guts behind, right?
So my dad,
Your gun in
he's
some
very,
cases.
he's very Democrat. He's
Exactly.
very farmer.
Uh-huh.
And the Farmers Union Convention was held in Denver, Colorado. I'm like, you're going? He goes, yeah, I'm going. He comes home, he's like, they were handing out CDD. I'm like, yeah, it's in Colorado.
Colorado,
Like,
yeah.
and you're a Democrat.
Yeah.
What do you expect? His eyes were
He's
really
the
open.
only one that is in your family that's that staunch. I know
He's just crying.
better Tim.
Yeah, Tim doesn't.
When I talk to him, he's like, my dad's so stupid. Why he's thinking.
I think his specificness, he's just. It's hysterical.
Tim's like, yeah,
He's
he's so
just
stupid.
doing
I'm
it
not sure what
just
he's even
'cause to
thinking,
do
why
it.
he even claims to be outside.
Right.
So what does it look like again?
That's what they're saying.
Oh, okay, that one's Stacy. Which it is, it's.
I don't.
But you know what's, is there college training?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they've got money, and that's what Tim.
I have no connection. And some girls fell long.
Oh, there's Paul.
The fertilizer has to do with this,
The oil.
yeah, realistically, Ukrainian, Russian.
Right, tilted.
Right now.
This way, out this way, I think.
It's skirmish.
Good. My head's in the sand.
Sure.
Is it? It is not safer that way. Wait till they come for your house.
They're not gonna.
That's what Ukraine said.
Your house, what?
I think they came from England.
Penny says it's better if you don't know anything. You just put your head in the sand and just
Thank you.
trust
He
that.
doesn't know my voice. I don't think my brain's gonna, or Russia's gonna get close to our house.
You never know. If you're not prepared, you never know.
She's got a couple boys that take a few dozen out with them. Which one's that?
Tyler.
Oh dear. There are some Americans over there.
I don't know if it's up to you, but Leslie's discussion would probably take a lot less time than this other.
Should we move it up?
Swap them just to give her, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. I can't imagine that she'd be upset.
Why is there no public comment on this one? Do you know?
This presentation, we're gonna, this,
Hey, Leslie,
just presenting the plan.
would you want to move?
We're gonna start working on the plan as a committee.
Meetings and stuff, right?
And then we'll do a lot of
Sorry, I'm yelling. Would you
So-
be okay if we moved you up?
Just, here you go.
That's what we're
Make sure
okay.
you're okay. A lot of public input.
Okay, we're on it. Okay, if somebody wants to make that, I guess we're gonna start. It's 5:30. If you're ready, are you ready? Okay, we're not gonna start. Brace yourself.
What? No.
As good as I can do.
What's wrong? What's it doing?
Well, I would like to pull that down and put his presentation up.
What are we waiting for?
We're waiting for her to get YouTube on the screen.
Oh.
How
How are you doing?
Fantastic.
You can turn it off until you're ready. Okay, welcome. Welcome, everyone. Appreciate you being here. We'll call the meeting to order, whatever time it is, 5:32. Do we have an approval of the agenda? A motion for that?
I'd like to make a motion that we amend the agenda to move Ms. Leslie Friedal's discussion ahead of the overview of draft integrated land use plan landmark design.
Okay, we have a motion and an amendment. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Declaration of conflict of interest. Anyone have anything there? Seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes from January 25th, 2022. I'd entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes for January 25th, 2022.
Okay, we have a motion. By Jordan. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Motion carries. New business, discussion of zone change, Leslie Friedal. We'll move straight to you. You proud of me?
May I hand something out?
Sure. Do you want her to be at that mic there? Is that where we want her?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I can have one. Thank you.
Yes, please.
How should I stand?
Just that mic right there. You can go ahead and sit down there.
Right here?
Yep.
Okay. All right, do I just tell you what I want to do? Sorry.
Yeah, give us your
Okay,
vision.
so
Yes.
I've been in front of the board before. There are some new members here. However, I own a building lot. If you'll turn to the second page of the handout, that sits right adjacent to Best Realty. And the lot is currently landlocked for all intents purposes. Because my relative, my sister Teresa Sandel, lives in front of there, I'm able to access my lot via a small lane that goes down by the side, which was approved the last time to be able to have access to the property for a single-family dwelling. Unfortunately, because of the costs that are associated with bringing the utilities to the lot, as well as the size of the lot being a half of acre, and myself being one person, I don't want to build a home that's going to fit the size of the lot. So what I'm wanting to propose is that that particular piece of property be approved for a fourplex. And I just put different reasons on here of wanting to build the fourplex. I put the fourplex and the look of it and what it will be. I'd like to propose just a single family, a multifamily fourplex with the idea in mind that I will live in one of the units. They're all going to be one-level units. I'm hoping to attract individuals with disabilities or older couples to be able to live in the other 3 units. I think that as many times as I've came in front of here, I'm trying to work something out. This lot has sat vacant for so long, and every time I come and propose something, I run into a block, and I just really want to get to the point where I'm able to use a lot that I've had for such a long time. And so I just have written down a few things, and I would just like to propose that that be made into a fourplex. Steve Bench said that it would have been okay if I wanted to do a 2-level or a multi-level house and use 1 level as a rental unit. However, I run into the same thing. It's a half an acre, and by myself, I'm not able to afford something like that to go on the lot. I imagine it's running through your mind to just sell the lot. Unfortunately, because it is landlocked, there's nothing that I don't assume there would be much interest in the lot. And I had an appraiser come out and do an appraisal for it, and it sits right next to Home Green Estates East. However, a half an acre lot appraised for $25,000 because of the fact that it is landlocked. So I'm just being put in a situation that it's a no-win really for me, and I just want to try to make the best out of a bad situation.
Anybody have any questions or? So currently it's zoned R110 correctly, right?
Yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
Leslie, can you explain you said it's landlocked, but you say you have access. Can you explain that a little better? Is it a recorded easement that you have?
Yeah, if you look at the second page, and it's not really that clear on here. However, if you would picture that Best Realty sits here, and then there's just a little, and it doesn't even meet the requirements of how wide the lane needs to be to get to the lot. But Steve, because of the situation that we're in, has approved it. So Best Realty sits here. There's a lane that goes down here, and it runs right by the side of my sister's property. So the lane comes down here, you turn and go into my property.
So do you know who owns the lane?
Yeah, I do. My sister owns the lane.
Oh, your sister owns the lane?
Yeah.
So do you have a recorded easement to? Okay.
Yes, yeah.
And do you know how wide the recorded easement is? Because usually those are, 30 feet?
It is not the required amount. I came before and talked to Steve with that, and because of the fact, I think it was 24 feet. He came out and did the measurements one day, but it is not the size of the regular easement amount. I know that.
But do you know the recorded amount?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I'm sorry.
Because the physical size of it and the legal size of it may be different.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just looking it up.
I don't believe that that's part of the legal description that's on the second page.
It, it may be recorded on whoever's property it goes through. So if it's your sister's property, it may be recorded on her property information.
Okay. But I do know for 100% guaranteed that it is not, because that's something that Steve and I were discussing, and he did come out and measure it, and it was not what would be actually required.
Yeah, I can't see it on there, so I don't know what it is. It doesn't, I mean, it's not a deeded access. Does the city allow that on an easement basis without it being a deeded access?
Oh,
I don't know how you'd put a fourplex on without a legal access. I don't know how you'd put anything on it without a legal access, but.
I guess technically the easement could be a legal access, but I mean, just not have it be a deeded, like physically deeded just through an easement through the neighbor's property, you know what I mean?
did you go on the county records, Mike, and see if, could you see
I-
it recorded?
I can't see it. I mean, it's not part of the legal description on her lot. It could still be there, but it's not easily accessible, but.
I guess therein the thing that you're discussing right now is therein lies the problem with my lot in general, is that how would you like me to get to my building lot? I meant therein lies the issue. When a strip mall was built so that I could have access to my property, you know, I don't really know what to do.
So you're wanting it to rezone to R120? Is that
Yes.
No, R120 is half acre lot. She wants it rezoned to mixed
to a
use.
mixed use? Okay.
Yeah, because the mixed use would allow the fourplex,
Okay.
where the R120 is
It's
half
just a
acre
bigger,
zoning.
the house,
Oh,
okay.
I'm sorry. I thought because it was a half
That's
acre
not
that
mixed
that's
use
what.
there.
It's just behind.
Her lot,
Mixed use.
if we understand it, her lot is R110 because it'd be zoned as part of the Holmgren Estates, the same zoning.
Yeah, it's contiguous
Single.
on the front, I think.
And the back.
Sister's
Sisters
house
is zoned
is mixed
commercial
use.
and residential.
So it's mixed
But
use.
just that lot.
It
isn't.
wouldn't be an island, would it? Because it's.
No,
'cause-
it's still attached.
Peninsula.
It's a
It's
peninsula.
attached, yeah. Oh, yeah, so I guess,
Attached on the back part of it.
yeah. The back
That's the only
part of
place it
the-
attaches, because you have apartments on the one side, which is multi-use. Then you have the strip mall, which is multi-use on the other side. So,
Well, probably what we need to do, I guess, is narrow down exactly what the width of the easement is and what the language is for use on the easement, and if the city allows the easement to grant access for a fourplex or a multiple unit dwelling before we know what to do at this point.
Sure, another question. Leslie, have you plotted out, you know, I think, is this what you're proposing?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Do you know, will it fit on the lot?
Yes, it fits on the lot. It would set towards the back of the lot, and it would run lengthways. I figured in that particular case, that would give enough room to where it's not disturbing the individuals, the Furmans that are behind us. And then also, you know, I have to keep the peace with my sister as well, so.
Is she okay with the fourplex?
Yeah, she is okay with the fourplex. No, she's not okay with the fourplex. No, she's not. I'm sure she'll be here any moment to tell you how not okay she isn't.
Yeah, part of the public hearing.
I'd like to be judged though off of just what I want to do on my lot that I own, and not, you know, my sister was able to build the house that she wanted on her lot, and this is my lot, so.
Sure.
I'm just worried about the size of the lane, the size of the access.
So
I mean,
Where you got a
can't-
lane and you have a zoning change.
You do, and you can't say yes to that will go 6 feet less on this and not others. I mean,
Well, that's what I was looking, do you remember? I
Right.
can't find it in here. What is the minimum width on a flag lot?
is Steve not gonna be present tonight?
Look like it.
he just stepped out.
Oh, okay. He was the one that came out and said that it would be okay, but I do have to preface that by saying that he okayed it when it was going to be for a single family use.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
But some of the differences in having it for single-family use is the lot itself is zoned for single-family use. So that's one of the, I guess you could call it a battle or a big hurdle that doesn't have to be crossed. This has to cross into the commercial world. So we're talking about a zoning change and the effect it has on the R1 homes that are around it. It does create a peninsula, and because it's commercial, I have no clue on the easement and the access, if that's different or... So we have to have information before we could even,
Yeah, that's true.
If you go to the code, 2.6.80 flag lot code, it defines the minimum, the access of the frontage of a deep lot or flag lot shall be a minimum width of 24 feet and no wider than 30 feet. And the pavement shall be 12 feet, and it shall service a maximum of 4 lots, no more than one single-family dwelling per lot. I mean, that's what the flag lot code reads. And
one single-family dwelling per lot, and you have one lot.
so I don't know how wide that is, but I would guess it's like 15 feet, just
I bet it's a little bit
looking
wider
at it,
than
doesn't
that.
look like that.
I'd say 20-ish.
Do you know how wide that access is into her place? Did you measure it? Oh, did you find the easement?
Save the day.
Oh, good job. Good work.
And she was saying that when you came out and measured, you were under the assumption that it was a single family going in there. So she
That was a year and a half ago.
And the code says a single-family can go
can
in,
go in.
maximum
Ex-
single-family.
Yeah.
So it's a 12-foot easement,
So that is 12 feet?
12 feet.
You're 12 feet short? Are we getting it right?
Basically.
24 is the
So
minimum?
basically, it's half the width it would need to be.
But
And-
that's kind of designed as kind of a flag lot, kind of a scenario with, seeing if they had any other details in here. Let's see, 12, okay, here, let's see here.
Yeah, but
Private
wouldn't
driver right-of-way serving the property is paved with either concrete or asphalt at least 12 feet in width if there are no more than 2 lots served by the driveway, and at least 24 feet in width if more than 2 lots are served by the drive.
So it's one lot, but it's
But it's-
serving purpose of 4.
But the ordinance says a single-family,
Yeah.
not a 4.
Not service. I was just trying to see if it had a definition as far as the access or frontage of a deep lot or flag lot shall be a minimum width of 24 feet. So it doesn't meet the code based on that. Unless it's wider than I think the easement is, but it looks like it's 12, 15 feet based on that.
Yeah, the picture looks like about that, but
And that's paved.
It's not paved currently. No, it would have to be
it would have to be
paved.
paved.
Yeah, which was understood, so.
I guess we need to,
Generally, I think it's a good place for that, just because it's
Well, it sits
Main
right next
Street.
to Best Realty storage units and,
buffer.
and then,
Could you get an easement from Best Realty to use their parking lot?
no, I've tried that with no bus. No, it doesn't work. Trust me, I'd do anything to not be sitting here right now. No disrespect to you guys, but like, I've tried so many things.
That's not Best Realty, it's Best.
Yeah, but
it's also
Noel
something
Best
Noel
still
Best.
owns it.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, Noel Best owns it and leases back to.
So is there a fence on her property and then it's on the west side of the fence, right?
Yeah. And the problem is and when Steve came out, we talked a little bit about this, but the problem with is she could move her fence, but she's planted trees all the way down that line, so there's no way to move it over to make it any wider.
And there's a fence on the west side also, right?
No, it's just a parking lot.
Parking lot, okay.
Yeah.
I'd entertain a motion, or if you guys have any other questions for Leslie, what you want to do.
Sure, so it's not on the agenda for approval, is it a discussion, is that,
That's new business.
what does the language say?
Discussion of zone change.
We need to do a public hearing before you get
Yeah,
approved.
I was told, Steve let me know the process of it. This was just the first step in then
Right.
allowing the
Discussion
people
of zone
around
change.
it to have, so I'm not like looking for an approval. I just,
I guess the vision is, I was thinking, though, we gotta, I guess, decide if we're not okay with it, we should just be,
I'd appreciate
you know,
that, so I
let's
don't
just
waste any more
address it
time.
now before
Yeah.
we,
Yeah,
Brett, did you have a
I
question?
just could say, it'd be nice to have kind of a drawing with all the,
Measurements,
how big it's gonna sit on the property and then the
the actual
road and
easement.
everything, and then it'd be a lot easier to have that discussion, it wouldn't need to be a professional, just a,
And I'm sure it's frustrating, Leslie, I'd be happy to sit down and help you and Steve and see if we could come back with a little better information, if you would want that.
yeah, that'd be great. Like I said, I just came tonight to, just present it and then see if it was even an option. And then I'm willing to do whatever is needed, to be able to go through it. But like Micah said, I would rather, if it's not, feasible, I'd like you just to tell me, because I've done this so many times and it's just, to me, is a lot of time used for nothing.
Well, my immediate gut is I'd go sit down with Noel again and maybe offer him the 12 feet easement to put storage units on in exchange for you being able to drive through there. And maybe he would be open to something of that nature, because he could use that, because he's already has pavement on that side. He could use that to access additional units, which would
Good idea.
increase cash flow for him, which would maximize the ability for you to use it. And then we can get the 24 feet. And then it becomes easier, I think, but.
But you still have a zone change and an ordinance change.
Sure.
Because
But
the
if we don't
ordinance-
have the access, the zone change is mute.
Because the ordinance says of single-family housing. One.
Which ordinance, what are you talking
You were
about?
reading that earlier.
Well, the flag lot allows up to 4 homes.
4 lots.
Yes, 4 single-family
resident.
lot.
Single.
That's exactly.
That's right. So I don't know how you'd put a fourplex on a single-family lot, according to that.
You have to rezone it
Rezone
to
it.
mixed use.
Well, but he's saying even technically with a flag lot, the multifamily isn't
Yeah.
really allowed under the flag lot provisions.
So I would make a motion that we not carry this any further based on that ordinance.
Okay, we have a motion. Any seconds?
So tell me what's considered a flag lot?
Flag lot is like, you have like the staff and then
Okay.
the flag.
Yeah,
So that's what she is a flag
Flag
lot.
lot.
That's why we
Okay.
review.
to go in, okay.
Yeah, that's why we refer back to the flag lot code to say, okay, what works? But it probably, at this stage of the game, I mean, depending on, I guess, do you feel like it's worth her coming down and trying to work it out with you, or
With all
or
the
you feel like
ordinances
it'll end in the
in place.
same?
I'd be happy to, but I don't want to frustrate the process. I don't know the answer without sitting down and trying to understand it better, so I don't want to make it a frustrating process for Leslie, but I'm willing to try to, understand the code a little better and see how it applies.
Well, let me rephrase that. Do you see a fourplex being accessed off of a 12-foot easement?
What'd you read? Read it one more time.
It says 24 feet
24.
Or what? Just, could you read it?
for a
one more
flag
time?
lot.
But for a single,
The flag lot says,
As it's written right now, it can't be done without a zoning change and an ordinance change or an exemption. That's why I made the motion that on this one, we say no.
The
Based on that.
access or frontage of a deep lot or flag lot shall be a minimum width of 24 feet and no wider than 30 feet unless a great distance is required by the Development Review Committee to ensure that the private drive or right-of-way shall meet the clear vision triangle requirements. And then it basically says you have to pave it. You have to pave 12 feet if it's 2 lots, and you have to pave the full 24 feet if it's more than 2 lots. Basically what it says.
Okay, I'm with you. I'm up to speed now.
So that's why he's saying it doesn't matter, we shouldn't move forward with it because it doesn't meet, the flag lot doesn't allow for multifamily to begin with. And even if it did allow, we don't have the 24 feet even for a single family flag lot access technically.
Okay.
Which we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second, going once.
I'm going to go ahead and second that.
Okay,
All right, thank you guys so much, appreciate it.
thanks Leslie, appreciate you. We have a motion by Paul, second by Penny. Any further discussion? All in favor? All in favor?
I
Okay.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, further my agenda.
Did you say nay or?
Yeah.
What did you say?
Aye.
Okay.
New business, overview of draft integrated land use plan landmark design. This will be broadcast on Tree Mountain City's YouTube channel. Turn the time over to, I'm not sure your name,
Sam Taylor,
Sam Taylor. Thank you, Sam.
sit in front of the mic, I guess is the. All right, thank you, everyone, for having me here tonight. And obviously, this is not a city council work session, it's the planning commission.
That's close.
The city council is in attendance, by the way.
Yeah, okay, excellent. The integrated land use plan is a project that we've had in the works for a couple years now. And I want to just start off by going over is this working? Let's see if that can, yes, okay. I just want to go over a background of this project, its purpose, and sort of the process we've been through with it. And to start things off, I want to address it as being an element of the general plan and what a general plan is. So, and this is for the benefit of everybody here, the general plan really is a document that is visionary in nature. It sets a course for the city's growth and development over the next 10 to 20 years. And it's important to know that it does not create regulation or requirements, but it can make recommendations for changes to be made to the ordinance. And it's a document that's required by state law. This integrated land use plan is intended to be an element of the general plan ultimately, but it is not zoning ordinance. So that's just a clarification. Land use plan will inform changes to be made to ordinance, but is not ordinance itself. So what we're talking about tonight is purely establishing a vision for where land use might be headed in the next few years, to help with the future growth and development that's currently happening and will occur over the next decade or so. Come on, Cynthia. Thank you. Part of how this particular plan has come about is there have been previous planning efforts in recent years that have needed an update to the land use element, or have required an update. And so you've had a couple of different plans that have been done on Main Street and recommendations made for urban design and things there. You've had a couple of capital facilities plans and a transportation master plan, all within recent history here. And so a big part of this plan is to take the recommendations from all of those plans and synthesize them as they apply to land use. This kind of outlines our process of how we have been going through this. We had an advisory committee that was established, members of City Council and Planning Commission, members of the business community, a couple of residents. We've also had a public scoping, was a community outreach session, which was conducted online due to the pandemic. And as part of that, we also had a visual preference survey that was conducted online. So I'll speak more to that in a little bit. And we've also had a webpage that's been going where people can keep updated on the process. And during all this time, we've been collecting feedback from the public, from the committee, doing our own analysis of what has been going on within the community, and drafting different alternatives, discussing where that might head. And we've arrived at the point of the draft plan. That draft plan has gone through a couple of iterations with city staff. It's posted online now for folks to review, and is here before you tonight. And so in finishing this process, we're hoping to refine this plan and move it towards adoption.
I think you have to point.
To-
Does he have to point?
Next slide. Yes. Thanks, Cynthia. Okay. So just an overview of the draft. I'm just going to do a quick walkthrough of its contents. Next slide. The plan is...
Sam?
Yes.
I'm going to interrupt just for a moment. And somewhere in the introductions, I missed what your role is in this.
I'm sorry. I am a planner, planning consultant. Landmark Design is a landscape architecture and planning firm.
And you worked on this project?
I have worked on this project. Also, Mark Vlasic, who is a principal within our firm, worked on the project as well. He was unable to be here tonight. But the two of us have been closely working with Sean on this for the last couple of years.
And a couple personal questions for you. Where are you from?
I'm from Sandy.
Okay.
Grew up in the Utah Valley and attended Utah State. So go Aggies.
All right, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so this plan has 3 chapters and some appendices. Chapter 1 is really a background and introduction to the plan, where we dug into just a little bit about Tremont's history, your physical profile as a community, and it outlines some of the demographics of your community and some of the trends that are happening. There's definitely a projection that you're growing, and that's probably evident by the amount of development.
You don't say.
And I mean, that's to be really expected across the whole Wasatch Front right now. We're experiencing unprecedented growth. What's interesting is that Tremont differs from many other communities on the Wasatch Front in that you have a growing younger population as well as an older population. So that has some implications as far as we look at the park system in Chapter 3. Some of the things we're looking for relate more to both young populations and aging populations, which is a little different than most communities that we've been looking at. But that's just sort of a side note. Chapter 1 also outlines a summary of our public engagement, which we had with the community. We conducted this right when the pandemic got going, so that was really exciting to take it online and try and make that work. But we had a great turnout with nearly 650 people showed up and left comments or took the questionnaire. There were 3 components to it. There was a visual preference survey, there was a short questionnaire, and there was this online map which people could drop pins and make comments and like and dislike other people's comments, all over the map of Tremont. And
So 645 is a great turnout, you said?
That's an excellent turnout in a
okay.
process like this. Typically, when we hold an in-person event, we don't see that kind of turnout.
Okay.
It's seldom reaches 100. So, so this was, for all intents and purposes, we thought was very successful. some of the key issues that people highlighted through the different segments of the public engagement as we analyzed all their feedback are kind of outlined in the bullets there. People really wanted to see additional commercial development anywhere in town, really, but downtown and at the freeway exits. There's concerns related to. Yes, go ahead.
Anywhere in this, did it differentiate what commercial they're looking for? Because we all have a different definition of that.
Yes.
A lot of us don't want big box. We like the smaller. Is there any distinction in any of this?
I think it was all geared at retail. Some folks did want to see big box by the freeway exits, but
I like on that side.
yeah, the west. I'm kind of stretching my memory here a little bit, but
Did the visual preference survey?
the visual preference survey, it indicated as well. I think people are looking for small establishment restaurants and retail, but they also, I think, are looking for a place to get general merchandise. That was the main thing that came out of when we say big box. They're really looking for a Walmart or equivalent. I think largely because the Shopko's gone. That was kind of the indication people had. Something that they could go and get general merchandise and not have to go to Brigham City or something like that.
And I think, I was just going to mention, I think the public comments are summarized, aren't they, in the appendix?
They are. So the appendix goes into much more depth as to all the comments and what came out of this process. So I'm totally just scratching the surface of it right now. There were concerns related to the quality and the density of multifamily housing within the community. So that's something that we've been pondering as we've gone through this process. Transportation issues really related to connectivity and general safety of the pedestrian or the bicyclist. You have a very auto-oriented community. That's not your fault. Every American community is. So how do we improve that pedestrian way of life? Related to the parks, open space, and trails, there were quite a few comments, desiring recreational trails within the community, desire for new parks within developing neighborhoods as they're coming on. Particularly on the west side, I think there's really not a lot of parkland in those new communities out there. And within the existing parks, the need for additional amenities, such as shade, pickleball, disc golf was one. So taking that public feedback and also our general thoughts about your community and its character and what we've learned about studying it, we developed a set of guiding principles to guide us through this process. And they're really aimed at preserving your character as a community, as a emerging rural community. And why people live here is they love the open spaces, they love the small town nature of this place. And so the guiding principles were really kind of aimed at, okay, how do we preserve that? How do we preserve open space within the community? How do we preserve the small town character? And also enhance the quality of life here, through parks and open space, through preservation of natural spaces, through design of buildings and streets and the built environment of the city. How is downtown take shape as it moves forward, and also examining what range of housing stock and what quality of housing are we providing here in the community. Encouraging businesses to relocate or to locate within the community, and also strengthening that transportation aspect of the transportation master plan. How do we build on that effort and incorporate things that are outlined in that document within the land use vision moving forward? So those are all the kind of guiding principles that we developed to kind of help guide us to the vision for land use within the community. And that's the culmination of kind of chapter 1. Chapter 2 dives into land use itself. And this is a map of your existing land use within your existing boundary. And outside of the existing city boundary, you'll note there's a lot of agriculture protection areas. And we've highlighted those throughout the plan as something that's important to the preservation of the open feel of this place moving forward. But within your current city boundary, there's a lot of agricultural or open land, which could be developed, honestly near term, should the opportunity present itself. And what we're seeing as far as your current built environment is we have, really the old town, which is the main portion of the city, but we also have this sort of West Tremonton sort of developing across the freeway there. And what will happen over the next while is these spaces between start to fill in. How do we manage that? And also, there's going to be plenty of future development opportunities probably outside of the city boundary, should those areas be annexed moving forward. And so as we've looked at this, we've also been examining the full declaration, what do you call that, Sean? The annexation declaration area of the full limits of how Tremonton might grow over time. So,
I realize you're doing an overview, and I'm trying not to delay or interrupt you, but would you dwell on that, what you just said, just a little bit more?
Yeah, so the city has declared a maximum annexation area. All communities have, as required by state law. And so the extents of that are largely within Tremonton, largely extend to the south across the freeway out to the marshes in the lower left, and eastward out to the Bear River. So those are areas that are not currently within city limits, but we still examined them as part of potential growth, largely because the Transportation Master Plan makes recommendations for.
So are you essentially saying everything from Garland south on that map is part of that area of interest?
More or less, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I think it might be shown better on the next map.
Yeah, it will. So you can kind of see the outer edge of this map here is that declaration area of possible future annexation. And so looking forward, though, in the near term, as we've analyzed this, we don't anticipate there needing to be a lot of annexation into the community. You have a lot of land already for development for your needs, but there will likely be opportunities, particularly as the Commerce Highway comes along on the south side of the freeway, and also the current city boundary to the east is kind of patchworked, so there might be some infill opportunities there for annexation. We analyzed, this based on, the population projections, where you're headed, trying to create a realistic picture of where you might end up within 10 to 20 years. And so that's what this map is representing of if these areas were to build out, this is kind of a picture of where it would land. There's another map within the plan. I don't have it in the presentation tonight, but it examines the community through full build out. But that's really just as a reference, not really the vision for the near term. So as you see here on the future land use map for the next decade or two, we've identified a number of districts and centers, and these are important areas within the city, as identified, in the current zoning and land use, also by the Main Street Plan, and also just looking at your transportation system and where the key entries and exits to the community are. At the core of the community, you have downtown, which is your central business district. And that, first and foremost, needs to be sort of the focus of the community in terms of your economic areas. But also recommended within the Main Street plan was the establishment of commercial nodes at the west and east ends of Main Street, being the highway exit on the west and the crossroads area on the east. And those are also those are significant areas which we felt should be carried forward and expanded on moving forward. Also on Main Street, there's a existing commercial section of agricultural focused businesses adjacent to the fairgrounds. And that particular area seems that as it moves forward through the area, due to over time, it should support fairground related uses due to its proximity to that site, but would obviously continue to probably carry on its current look and nature right now. Another interesting area that's kind of being brought to the forefront here is Area G, the Commerce Center. So the Transportation Master Plan calls for a arterial road to bypass truck traffic off of Iowa String and take it over to the freeway exit. So as that road comes along, that would open up an opportunity for a additional, industrial or manufacturing node, and support businesses for that along that corridor. And we also highlight, an additional neighborhood center on the far west freeway exit to support, growth that happens out there. So I think I've covered all the ones on the map there, but as you can see, the color code outlines all the different uses. And really what we're looking for in terms of how this transpires is first and foremost to preserve what you have on the ground right now. So that's why everything that's existing residential to remain, we intend for that to stay as is. That's important that you preserve your existing neighborhoods. And as things move out from the downtown core or from the commercial centers, that there's a level of density that marches away from that and becomes less and less dense with the housing. This is related to the planning principles of the urban transect, which is really geared at trying to preserve open space and create walkable communities. And so that really kind of governs the thought process with this stepping of density as we move away from the core areas. The plan covers each of these and what they might look like in detail. This is one page from the plan that outlines, what is a neighborhood center, what should multifamily residential look like, what should a medium to high density single family area look like. And so each of the land use types is described in more detail for a better understanding of the map. And also within the end of Chapter 2, there is a section on community design considerations that goes beyond use to analyze, how can we not just become a big sprawling behemoth, but preserve what's important about this place. So some of the considerations that are proposed are modifications to your current zoning ordinance, and I'll be talking about that later in Appendix C. Preserving open space and sensitive lands, at the forefront of that is preserving lands along the Malad, which cut through your town, but also looking at other opportunities with the protected agricultural areas. How might open space be preserved so that it's not just wall-to-wall houses? And also, there are recommendations for preserving visual resources and unique features. So, and so those, visual resources and unique features are highlighted in this map here. There are certain areas of the community which have excellent views towards, open and natural areas. And there should be a preference for preserving open space in those areas so that those views can be maintained. There's a recommendation here for gateways and nodes and corridor treatments as well. And how do the routes through town get developed over time to give a signal to where you are in the community, with more urban treatments being given towards the core of the community, but more rural treatments being given further out towards the periphery. And also, beautification along your highway, your interchanges. How do people that are coming through or into Tremonton get what sort of sense do they get of this community when they arrive, based on how the highway is treated, particularly as you start building out to its edge. The end of the chapter concludes with all of this summed up into a section of goals, policies, and implementation measures. And these are really to be used by the commission and city staff to understand what recommendations to take forward here and to consult for making policy. Chapter 3, we also looked at your parks, open space, and trails system. And this is related to land use because, well, we need to preserve that open space, right? So if we're to preserve the character and improve the quality of life. So we've looked at the park system as part of this from different angles. One is a level of service, which looks at the acreage that you currently have in the system per your population. And as you can see on the right there, your existing level of service right now is 3.4 acres per 1,000. That's a little low compared to most communities on the Wasatch Front. However, you already have 3 new parks coming on in the near term, which is going to boost that up past 5. 5 is actually a really difficult number to maintain, so we're recommending that is a future level of service that you aim for the in-between at 4.5, and that's where that number's coming from. That's just one angle of looking at park needs within a community. Another is distribution, which is how are they located throughout the community and keeping parks within walking distance. And so we've examined that as well. And we've been looking at the existing parks and their amenities, and so we can make recommendations for what amenities might be needed within the parks. In addition to recommending amenities, though, we're also recommending where future parks might be located based on the distribution analysis and how those parks might develop by giving a set of park development standards to help make sure that those parks are of a high quality and are actually giving a benefit to the community.
My mind's still stuck on the 5 acres is tough to do, so let's shoot for something easier. That seems like a weird thing.
So as
If 5 is better, reckon why don't we shoot for that even though we may not always hit it?
Especially if
Yeah.
Brigham's 8. Brigham was 8.
generally, as communities grow, their level of service decreases. That's just a general rule because you have fewer acres per growing population with math. However, if every community has its priorities, and some communities actually do, like Brigham City, actually aim for a very high amount of park acreage. So we settle on the 4.5, largely because that's what most communities are doing on the Wasatch Front. That's the general average that we see. that
Okay.
most communities are able to maintain. And, you know,
Coming from our rural, where we are, we'd all like to see 20, so
for sure.
I don't see.
And it's important to know that, like, this is
Maybe
really just one level of service is just one angle to look at parks. The national standard is actually 10 acres per 1,000 people.
Perfect. Let's do it.
And
That should at least be mentioned in there. That's all I'm saying.
yeah.
It
And-
struck me really weird to say, because the goal is difficult, we're going to lower it.
Yeah.
So we can hit it. And that doesn't settle well.
Generally, here in the West, we have so much natural open space and our public lands are so readily available that most people are able to meet their recreational needs in a variety of ways beyond just the city park system. So that's where communities in Utah have kind of pulled back from the 10
Except we're
acres
losing it.
generally in order to
Okay.
acknowledge that. Great question. This map here is a map of that distribution analysis I mentioned. It looks at walking distances and or driving distances based on the park's size. So smaller parks are less likely to attract people from all the way across town. So they have primarily a walking service radius, whereas a larger park like Jeannie Stevens would attract a larger radius. As you can see, most of the core part of the community is well served by parks. But there are two emerging gaps happening in the newer developed areas on the west and east ends of the community. And so our future parks map addresses those gaps moving forward. The parks chapter tries to classify the parks by their size and into a typology of what each of the parks might have. And it establishes a group of park standards and amenities of what might be expected in each of those park sizes. Here's a page, showing what the local park standards would be. And similarly, there are standards for the neighborhood and community parks types. We're using these to evaluate the amenities within your existing system, as well as to provide recommendations for the construction of new parks and what they might maintain. It's not meant to be any sort of constrictive, prescriptive thing, because every site is a little different, and there might be special uses for a certain park that another park might not have. And so it's to be used with a grain of salt, but generally this is the rule of thumb for how we're evaluating these parks.
So one of my questions applies to this whole thing. How much of this recommendation is just a boilerplate, and how much of this is based on actual data or things from this community?
So,
Because,
Yep.
let me preface that.
yeah,
I know when I read through it, one of the things you asked them to identify pictures of what they see the community like, what their favorite scene was.
Yep.
And one of the favorite scenes was an alfalfa field full of hay. Based on that, how much of this is from that data from our citizens and how much of it is a boilerplate?
so we're talking about developed parks right now,
Okay.
right?
But it applies to
Yeah.
this whole thing and
Yeah.
parks included.
Yeah. And so we try to differentiate in this chapter between parks and open space. And what folks from the community input have kind of pushed at is that they like the open space. They want that preserved. That being said, there's going to be recreational needs within the traditional park system. So the standards that we put in here are an adaptation from national standards established by the National Park and Recreation Association. But we've tried to adapt them for our locale, similarly to how I talked about the level of service earlier. So that being said, if there's something in here that we feel should be changed based on Tremont's character, that's totally up for discussion.
I appreciate that.
Well, and Paul, maybe we should clarify too. I mean, I think the goal of tonight is just kind of an overview, kind of have him give us a vision of where.
I understand. I don't want to delay him, but I also want to know some of the background on where this is coming from.
Sure, but what I was getting at was, I think ultimately, we gotta bring this back and parse it out.
I
piece by
absolutely
piece,
agreed.
You know, go through it so we understand it. So I guess I didn't really expect to understand it, you know, right this minute, but yeah.
And thanks for letting me interrupt.
You're fine. These tables just kind of show an excerpt from our analysis of the amenities within the existing parks. And we go through a few different levels of how, each park is serving your population, and how many, once again, this is derived from NRPA standards, but modified for our locale. So there's a suggested level of service for each type of amenity. How many of a certain amenity should you have for your population? And so we've gone through and inventoried everything in your current park system, found where there's surpluses or deficits, and generally things look really good. There could be an additional pavilion, some additional pickleball or tennis courts, another playground, but most things considered the current to meet the park standards that we're looking at and the near-term future, the amenities are in good shape. Looking further down the road towards the 2050, which this upper table shows, there do start to become some deficits if there aren't additional amenities provided for. So that's to help, is the Parks Department is planning of where they might spend some dollars on future projects, is kind of give them a lens towards that end. Chapter 3 also talks about trails. This was definitely something that we heard from the public as a priority, the establishment of a trail system. And trails can look a lot of different ways and be a lot of different things to people. And so we've tried to create a classification of them. Some trails are adjacent to streets, and their main purpose is to get people from one end of the community to the other. Others are fully separated, and they're really there for a more of a recreational benefit. This has really taken an adaptation of your previous trails plan and added onto it, acknowledging future development areas and trying to provide connections to some of your more important open space areas, such as up on the mountain or out towards the Bear River, or even along Salt Creek. Ultimately, this is not something to be built out all at once. This is something that comes along mile by mile, and the plan acknowledges that there are certain trails within the city's core that are probably the most important, being the canal. What do you call it, Sean? The canal, central trail corridor, or canal trail, rail trail, and also along the Malad River would be, sort of the first fruits to aim for. But then this map is just to guide that system as it progresses beyond into the future. And once again, to summarize this chapter, there's a series of goals, policies, and implementation measures, as well as a action and implementation plan to guide the park staff as they're looking for what they should be doing and when. The back of the plan has a number of appendices, and Appendix A is a summary of the public engagement process that we went through. So it goes into much more depth than I've gone in tonight. I'm not going to go through that tonight, or most of these appendices actually. But that's what that one is. Appendix B, we had a sub-consultant study from Zions Public Finance that looked at the business community within Tremonton and analyzed your market share, essentially, to kind of get a sense of how much commercial can we realistically expect from the community as it's growing. So their findings are contained within Appendix B. Appendix C, we conducted an analysis of your zoning ordinance and how it relates to this land use vision. and I'll talk about that in a minute. Appendix D is a group of funding sources for parks and open space projects, really as a reference for city staff as they're looking for sources for those. And Appendix E is a collection of long-term zoning models for your consideration. So the recommendations that come out of Appendix C, the zoning analysis, suggest that there might be some different zoning models that you might consider for parts of your community as you're moving forward. Sean asked me to talk a bit more to this appendix today and sort of the recommendations that came out of it. As I mentioned, we've got this new future land use map that we're proposing in Chapter 2 that is intended to provide a vision for how things might progress over the next 10 to 20 years. And obviously, it's not fully aligned with what might be on the zoning map today. And so we've examined that and identified those areas that are not in alignment and provided specific recommendations or questions to be asked as to how those might be fixed or brought to coincide with land use in the future. And it may be that, it doesn't get that far. That'll be, the choice of the staff and the commission going forward. But we've tried to be thorough in analyzing every area and making sure that, there's a reality check for how we might make this vision become a reality. The findings of this analysis, in summary, your existing zoning addresses land use as well, but it doesn't necessarily have a lot of controls for design and details, things such as open space requirements or tree requirements or things like that, architectural controls as well. The current ordinance also has an extensive use of overlays and development agreements, which has pros and cons, which I'll get into in a minute. It doesn't quite have a lot about transitions between land uses right now, and so that was something that we're recommending might be addressed. And obviously, as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't necessarily reflect the vision within this plan. So if this plan were to be adopted, that's what this is recommending, is that we make some changes. So many of the things that we found in the discrepancies with the zoning ordinance can be adjusted with very small, short-term changes. However, there may be areas of the city which might require a larger, long-term, or a different model to kind of govern them. Particularly mixed-use areas tend to struggle under a conventional zoning model. And so Sean asked me to kind of outline these different models, and these are things for you to consider as you're thinking about zoning in the future. We have the conventional zoning model or the Euclidean model, which really, it's what people are familiar with. We have different land uses on a map that have standards associated with them that govern the height and the setback and what's allowed for the use within that land use. The values of it are it prevents mixing, and that in turn helps with property value and makes good neighbors, right? But some of the cons with that are it actually works against mixed-use neighborhoods, which we're finding, in modern planning, there's a lot of benefit to having certain areas as mixed use because it encourages walkability, less reliance on the automobile, and it also helps combat sprawl. So those are some of the cons, with the conventional zoning model, is that it's not necessarily geared towards addressing some of those issues. The other existing zoning model that you have really prevalent within Tremonton is the development agreements. And these are a legally binding contract between an owner and a developer. And they kind of create a separate contract from the zoning code and the other ordinances. So the parties negotiate exceptions or requirements that are different than what's in the standard ordinance. The great thing about these is that it helps both the city and the developer party to tailor an agreement that works for both of them really well. And it helps the city out by giving measures such as periodic reviews to make sure that the developer's complying with what they've agreed upon. The challenge with development agreements is that they often are fraught with legal challenges, and they're very difficult to make alterations to once they've been established. And the public can also perceive these as backdoor deals or under the table deals. So there is a challenge making this your go-to model with new development because of some of those implications that they come with. A model that we're proposing might be beneficial to at least some areas within Tremonton is the notion of the form-based code. And what this code has kind of emerged in recent years, it's being adopted by a number of communities here regionally, is near to us is Weber County. And the focus is less on the use, but more on the form of the development. So it's really about the relationships between the buildings and the public spaces and how those buildings are shaped and scaled and what materials are used. And so that provides a lot of flexibility and greater, as far as the use is concerned, and a greater control over how buildings are going to look. And it includes a really clear design standards to go with them. So the outcome of that is hopefully, we know what's going to be built and the developer has a pretty clear sense of what they're getting into when they apply for a permit. As we talked about establishing special districts, special places within the community, this could be a model that helps establish those, particularly, downtown, how does that achieve the vision that's outlined in the Main Street plan? Something like this might assist in that. And also, this a code like this helps provide transitions between these different areas because it's really designed around this concept of the transect, which I talked about earlier, where you have this transition from the natural to the most dense or most urban. And so there's a lot of benefits that come out of these, and as certain communities in the Wasatch Front have adopted these, they have seen a lot of interest in previously uninteresting properties. Because it's offering that flexibility that developers are looking for, and also giving the city that benefit of controlling what is actually coming in and what that looks like. Some of the cons to this are they're new. They're kind of scary in a little bit in ways to folks, and some people still might be concerned about having a mix of land uses. So. There might still be a desire to retain that separation of one land use from another. And it also requires that understanding of architectural and material standards. So with that, a form-based code isn't necessarily something that we would recommend that you apply to the whole city, but perhaps sections of the city, which ultimately, what we tend to recommend to folks is that they try and achieve a hybrid of all these models, right? That there's a place for everything within the community. It depends on what the outcome you're looking for is. And so, with a hybrid model, you're taking, the conventional ordinance that you already have, and you're adding on this layer of form-based code to specific areas. And this really gives you the most flexibility and the most control over those specific areas that you want to see take a certain shape and form.
I have a question.
yeah,
if you
go
don't
ahead.
mind. Are you aware of a city that's about our size that has about our same goals that has successfully implemented and done something of this scope? I guess I find it hard to use Ogden and Woods Cross as a good example of what we want to do to preserve our agriculture. But, not saying it can't be done.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying, are you aware of anyone, any city, anywhere who has implemented an agriculturally based vision of what we want as a community and actually been successful and like something you would want to model?
Locally, I'm not aware of any. That doesn't mean that they don't exist out there. So I would have to get back to you on that one. That being said, the principles of the form-based code can be adapted. So I'm confident that it can be done for a community of your size and character.
So let me just restate, I'm not sure if I really understand the form-based code, but basically you're saying just the way, the shape, the buildings, the materials, how they work, not necessarily what goes in them, just what they look like and how they fit in with the architecture and the parks and the walking trails and all that sort of stuff.
It's really a code geared around design over use, and that the use will follow the design. It's kind of this age-old form follows function or function follows form, and and so.
And that's what Ogden has done. This
So in Appendix E, we provided examples from South Ogden, which is a suburb of Ogden, right? It's not Ogden proper. So they're actually a smaller community, and Woods Cross as well. And so those communities have adopted those ordinances, and they're having success with them. They're working for transforming some of their commercial areas that haven't had a lot of traction into becoming actual, city centers, places to want to be, because prior to adopting those ordinances, they were pretty much vacant and done for, and there was no real center of town to go to. And so, that being said, I mean, they're by no means built out yet. They're recent adoptions, but they have seen a lot of interest in, following that practice. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, Micah, but.
Mr. Chair, maybe we could change the question slightly and ask them if there's been any master plan communities that you've seen that, maybe have implemented these types of principles that have been successful.
Yeah. Clinton? Huh? I don't know.
I don't know. I guess I was just visualizing like somewhere in this country, there has got to be a town that started rural, grew a little bit, stayed rural, implemented some really cool policies and some cool things, figured out how to manage all this stuff together, that we could go figure out what they did right, what they screwed up, and actually even be better than them rather than trying to implement something down south.
For sure.
I think that was a really good question, because I know South Weber, whenever you say Weber, I'm thinking huge city. They have not preserved any of their agriculture. I mean, all of their cherry orchards, they're gone.
Yeah.
So when that was on my mind. You questioned it really well.
Yeah,
Michael.
and I think the communities we provided examples of the code for aren't geared towards the open space preservation. They're geared towards establishing places within their community. And when I say places, it's a real place, a place where you want to be and go and spend your time and spend your money and whatever. So those are built out communities, obviously. So, but there are communities, and I'm not sure if they've used form-based codes to achieve this, but they have successfully preserved a significant amount of open space by implementing what we call the Conservation Subdivision, which is mentioned in Chapter 2 as a recommendation. Now that is basically, I go back.
Housing's crunched up in one spot.
Yeah.
Let me go back to the image because that's the best way to describe it.
Is
With conventional subdivision development, say everyone wants a half-acre lot, well, pretty soon it doesn't look very rural anymore. So the idea behind a conservation subdivision is that you concentrate that density in one area, but preserve an amount of open space in the other, which then becomes used for whatever use it becomes. It can be developed as park, it can be kept natural, it could have agricultural uses continue on that land. It can be a number of things, but that is something that has been successfully done in both master plan communities and non-master plan communities in a lot of different places. So I think that's something to be, if you were to adopt a form-based code, I think that would be a core component of it.
I was gonna say,
Does the city want form-based code? Is that why this is coming in, or is this just an option and an idea?
It's really just an option and idea. So, really what we're trying to establish with this document is this is a vision. And these are just some considerations for you to achieve that and things to be thinking about to get there. So, but it's not necessarily saying that the city is desiring any particular direction.
I just wondered how much of it
Yeah.
was.
trees.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I was gonna say, not that we want
Is
to be
that
part of the
trees?
city per se, but I think one
That's a
thing
lot
that
of trees.
Vermont's done well is they preserved a lot of open space, and frankly,
Pennsylvania.
Like Virginia, yeah, back east.
there are tools talked about in the plan to do it, but essentially the public felt so strongly about the open space that they were willing to bond and buy the open space and preserve it in different ways. And there's different tools that are discussed, but that's certainly the best way to really preserve open space in meaningful ways, is people's got to be willing to be willing to spend to preserve it.
Yep. Park City is a great example. And also, not that you're Park City, but they have successfully preserved open
Park
space.
City.
Harriman is another example, right? Harriman was once, not long ago, very much similar to your community. They're not now.
That's not helping my situation.
They have successfully preserved a significant amount of open space on the benches that would have been built out otherwise through some of these sort of things. So those are just two examples.
Perfect. Keep going. Do you have more?
Sorry, I'm going back here. I think that was it. So, the draft of the plan is available online at this website here, ldi-ut.com/treemountain.
Is that what's on the website? Is it the same version?
It's the same version. Yep. And, we'd encourage everyone to look at it, read it, we have a comment form at that website, so we would love to have people's comments come through. And that's it. Yeah, thank you.
So I think going forward, I think the plan is to hold that draft constant, meaning that as you review it and make suggestions and changes, I think Sam and Mark will write down those suggestions and changes and forward that same draft along with those recommendations and changes to the city council for their consideration. And ultimately the changes will be implemented by at the conclusion of the process with the city council approving a draft with those recommended changes. Is that?
Yep, that outlines it well.
Perfect. I was thinking we probably ought to set up a work meeting at some point and dive into it, see how far we get, but at least kind of go through more of it together as a group and try to understand what we want or where we feel like it needs work.
I'm curious as to what percentage you're putting of the people's comments are going into this plan. What percentage, are we taking
read
in
it.
consideration? Yeah, because the number one thing was limit new growth was what the people said.
Right.
I don't see it anywhere.
Right.
in the plan.
So we can't obviously just say, I mean, you could put a moratorium.
So why was it even a question, though? Was it a
Get a vision
question,
of-
just to get a vision of what
where
the
things
people
were
wanted?
going.
Okay,
But it's
Yeah,
really
so-
hard. I mean, if you owned 100 acres, how many acres
For
of
sure.
that would you want to give for open space?
But then another number one question I found interesting was, but we want more restaurants and we want more of this, and so they're kind of,
Cross.
yeah.
There's a lot of competing interests that.
well, see, and I think that that's like
balance.
what Micah was saying, is how can we balance it? I mean, what city has balanced it? You know, that we can have those restaurants and limit, you know,
And I think that's.
be more agriculture.
That's what we
Yeah.
gotta figure out. Well, and like Sean said,
Sure.
I mean, there's 100 ways to do it, and it talks a lot about, it looks like, I haven't read it all, but finding funding
300 pages.
mechanisms, which might involve, like you say, bonding and actually buying some of the dirt, implementing some development procedures to help try to preserve some of it by improving higher density in one spot to
For sure.
bring some open space, kind of like what they did with River's Edge. But yeah, we need to go through that. But is there anything else we need to talk about today, or other questions we had?
So one question, so, you know, the thought is that Sam and Mark could attend in person, or they could attend and participate remotely. You know, the difference is just, you know, costs to the city. Is there a preference that you have? I mean, as far as, we want you certainly to have the resources and be able to communicate clearly. What's your preference? How would you?
I think we need to have a kind of a session with ourselves and get through this thing, right? And then at some point have him come back.
Well, maybe ideally, I guess, if we could have him available by Zoom or whatever, we could have our meeting, come formulate all of our questions and, you know, advice, whatever we need. And, you know, as we make progress in each meeting, try to get the answers we need on the fly, rather, or at least get them working on the answers that we need. Do you know what I mean? I think the Zoom would be a good option if it's
And it's
available.
nice to have some of this laid out, I mean, printed.
You're old school.
Yeah, we can print your copy.
I'm the same. That's why I'm trying to look at.
I have a copy of it. I already printed
Do
it
you know
out.
anybody that owns a copy?
You can flip through it on the screen you want. Yeah, exactly.
Notes. But, okay, yeah, does that answer your
So
question?
he'll attend by Zoom and just participate as needed through the discussions, give insight and clarity on what was drafted and why.
I agree with that. I was just simply saying that at some point, it might be nice to really have a meat and potato meeting with them present.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, we can certainly do
Like
that.
here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, maybe what we ought to do is get through it, get all of our comments, get a real understanding, you
All
know.
300 pages.
No, 311.
Don't cut it short, Penny.
Might be a couple meetings.
And yeah, well, I'm
You're
sure.
not
it
gonna
will
go
be.
through all those codes, I hope.
Well, what I don't
Oh,
want
we're
to do.
going to.
I was at a county meeting a while back, and they were doing a plan of this scope, and it was brought up that if any of you guys read the whole thing, and they all said no. And that's not what I want to do here.
No, I
mean, we
agree.
need to understand it,
We
and we
do.
need to know what it is before we present it back to the city council with understanding and questions answered, and a plan that we can feel like all of us can get behind and that
Sure.
is going to be sufficient. And like I say, if we have to have a few meetings and get answers from him and then bring it back and do a final work session.
I mean, when are we, you mentioned about pulling the public into this again and getting, I mean, that puts a,
Well, and to me, I mean, the public is one thing, but I think if you go and talk to everybody, there's like this loud vocal group of this, but then there's also all the property owners. The property owners are the ones who are the most affected by this ultimately, because it's their value of their property that we're talking about in the future. I think it's the landowners that we really need answers from, is what they
not
want.
necessarily though, Micah, because I live here, my kids all attend, you know, and they're gonna be working, and so it affects.
We need a balance.
I think
Well,
we
does,
do, but it
does,
affects the
it's-
citizens
it's
too.
The future of like all the people who own the dirt, it isn't developed, is what we're talking. We're not gonna take your home value away traditionally.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to make it better, but we could potentially take the value of somebody else's dirt that's sitting there that who
Mm-hmm.
knows who owns or whatever, but we've gotta make sure that they have their input into the process, I feel like.
Well, Mr. Chair, if I could, the process that's envisioned forward, we did a lot of scoping and had participation. And there's lots of other options and opportunities for people to participate and provide comments and input. Specifically, you guys will have a public hearing, and we've done our best to make this plan known in different forms, and we'll continue to do it through the process. But that's the opportunity that's sort of envisioned in the state code, is now that there's a draft, to have that
Go to work.
public hearing and listen to what people say. And this is one of those times when you can, consider them, because it's ultimately going to be a legislative decision, and ultimately, include those recommendations or thoughts into the final version that's forwarded to the city council.
So how long does one of these usually take to start from beginning to end? Is 5 years normal?
9 months to have a baby.
Right?
No, I'm really curious.
I think it varies from community to community. I think,
Because, right, we're going on 5 years? It started 17?
no.
Is
no,
what I
no,
saw.
it started in 2020.
Started in the
The
pandemic.
pandemic slowed
Oh.
it down a little bit,
Right,
from what we typically would have done.
okay.
I think,
I'm just wondering what our timeline is.
yeah.
I don't think there is a timeline. I
There is
think
no
we just gotta
timeline.
work
I mean,
through it.
and the thing I think I should stress as well is that perfection is not the goal in this. It's intended to be a living document that can be modified and should be updated regularly. So we need to get close, but every single minute and point of it doesn't have to be 100% perfect.
But I think
because
it's, yeah.
it's a vision document, right? The purpose of this document is vision,
Okay.
not ordinance, right?
One
That's where you got to be perfect, it's on the
Sure.
ordinance.
The other question I had, I guess, was just in reviewing preliminarily. I haven't really had a chance to read it all, but in reviewing it preliminarily, it showed growth of, 98 homes next year and 100 and something the following year and 130 the following year. I just wondered how up to date the population proposal and the developments that are in process, and you know what I mean? If this is 2020 data or 2022 data.
We have tried to update that through the process. It is a moving target, but we're trying to hold to some number so that we have data to work with. But you're right, it's difficult to keep the numbers set in stone because they are.
So in 2050, you've projected 470 units, and we're already at 374. So, right? Multifamily,
Family.
yeah. Oh, for that year? Oh, okay. So 970 total. So we're halfway there, almost.
That's, I guess, what I was getting
Yeah,
at, because
if
I'm
the
guessing
numbers are
if the
changing.
population numbers change more dramatically, the whole
The
plan
whole-
would be adjusted, parks, everything would be
Right,
adjusted.
and so that's where we would recommend that, the plan be reexamined, because, yeah, I mean, a population projection is just that. I mean, the reality is that growth may be much stronger and faster, or it could be slower. So, looking at those numbers again in a few years, you can then, make adjustments to the plan. It's an opportunity to say, okay, does this need an update, or, are we good for now?
So what do you think that, you divided it into 3 sections, right? Why don't we take a bite at a time and let's hit the first section first?
Yeah.
Which was, what was the first section? It was on.
Mostly overview.
Yeah,
The first section's overview. Really, I think we probably just need to meet, go through it till we don't want to anymore and see where we get. Because
But
I
if we're
just
gonna
don't
get the
know.
public involved, we don't wanna have them come with reading 311 pages and then just get bombarded with a whole bunch of ideas. It'd be nice if we can't concentrate those ideas into little mini sessions and talk about those.
And then the
That's
public
what I
comment on those
Yeah,
sections
the
also?
public and just say, hey, come on in, and this is what we're gonna be working on this week or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And we'd love to hear some comments on this section. And I think it would make it a little bit more, it'll be easier to discuss.
For sure.
Well, so section 1 is like the history, community, public involvement, community vision. I don't know, we could probably do 1 and 2, but really the bulk of it is in 2 and 3, I guess, in the appendices, but yeah, whatever you think, or however you guys want to do
It's
it.
your meeting, I just,
Yeah. No comments? Anything? How do you guys want to do it? Do you want to, when's our next meeting? Do we know?
weeks.
March 22nd. Do we want to design a specific amount of data that we're going to review at that particular meeting?
So you want us to try to review it prior to, and then we can have a discussion, public comment? on that, okay.
I mean, we sure can. I just not sure. I mean, land use, I don't know how long it's gonna take us to go through it, if we can do it all in one meeting or not. I mean, it's a lot of stuff.
Right. And that may need to be bite-sized sections as well, I don't know. What are you thinking, Paul?
I think you break it down, just take a, and also, I mean, if we can have a 30-minute discussion on the section, and then cover
At each
regular
meeting.
business would be better. Because
Yeah.
if not, we're liable to run on till midnight.
Yeah.
Sure.
Let's just take a bite size.
But do you want to announce that as part of the discussion so everybody knows what we're going to address? Does that make sense? So I guess, maybe we just say we're going to address section 1 and section 2, and we'll see how far we get, and then we can do it again if we don't get through it. Is that
Prior.
sufficient?
I think
Is
that's
that
good.
And we can, the public can know that those are the ones we'll be going over, they can read through it, come in, give
Okay.
comments.
Yeah,
That way we're focused.
okay. I don't think we have any other business, anything
Will the
else?
public comment be before our discussion? During, after?
Well, we can have it wherever we want it, I guess. Where did you want it?
I don't know. I just think it would be good to hear their comments before we, as a part of it. I don't know. Would you do
want
it as a part of
before
it?
Or after?
I don't know.
You mean at our meeting here?
No.
Whatever you want to do. I mean, we can have her put it on the agenda, so everybody's planning on that, if you want to do it before or after. I mean, I don't think it's a bad idea, you know, as long as we have it. I guess there might be more things that come to their minds through the meeting and comment after
that's true.
the initial meeting, so we probably ought to just do it at the end.
Yeah, I like that.
Now, in a workshop setting, does it, I don't know the answer to this, but does it work to have the public involved with that whole work section and be able to talk and share, or would that extend it quite a bit?
We just do 2 sections.
I'm just saying, the public can comment and.
I like the interface with the public, but in order to make it work, you have to keep the scope of what we're talking about very, the band very narrow, and we can talk about that. I do like being able to have a conversation with them in whatever form that entails, and I think they do too.
Yeah, I like it.
We could try it.
Did you want to have?
How many
comment?
sections do we have?
There's 3 technically. 3 and then 5 appendix, A, B, C, D, E.
But I think your point of, let's make sure we want some developers here, we want all walks of life to be in attendance, and everyone feel comfortable being able to discuss that openly, and so.
So your question is to have the comment before we go, which is sometimes helpful for us because we know what's on their mind. And then we'll have our little work, and then what is your question?
Well, it was her question, just when they were gonna be put on the comment, which I don't mind if they interface as long as we can get through it, you know what I mean, through the meeting. My question right now is, do we wanna open it up to public comment to hear what the public here has to say in regards to where we
Oh,
are
tonight,
today?
right now?
Yeah.
Oh,
Right?
oh,
Yeah. I mean, for just a couple minutes, if anybody had anything they wanted to speak about to hear where we are today. Anybody?
public is here.
To make a motion to do that, then we have to add it to your agenda.
You want to? Sure.
I'll make a motion that we set across some time for some public comment right now.
what, 2-3 minutes apiece?
Yeah.
Jordan's gonna time.
Someone make a
I
second.
second
We
that
have a
motion.
motion, do we have a second?
I second that motion.
A motion, second by Jordan, all in favor?
Aye.
I,
Opposed? We'll open up public comment period to hear if you guys have any specific comments or anything that we need to think through as part of this plan.
well, and how we can help the public, or how the public can be a part of it.
Sure.
Hear it.
Anybody? Yeah, you gotta come up to the mic. She's gotta put you in the minutes.
There's a mic on the table. If the podium's not set up, it's kind of a flat mic. You just set at the table.
Say your name.
Tell us who you are.
So when you guys were talking about cities that have similar look as Tremont and similar feel, the agriculture that has turned into this more urban look and made it all work, I would recommend, if you're not familiar with Clinton, I grew up in Clinton. We had, I don't know, a few stop signs. We had no stoplights. We had no gas stations. And I recall when Walmart in particular was trying to come in, the city was growing house-wise, but there were no other businesses coming into Clinton. And so it was probably 20 years that Walmart was trying to buy this family's land. And I remember just being so angry about it. Everyone was angry about it. And fast forward all this time, I go back to Clinton now, and when you go to what you talked about, or when he was talking about the kind of the heart of the city, there was our city park. And now that city park is enormous. I mean, it's beautiful, it's huge. And all around that park, they've, increased, there's a brand new fire station. There's, medical facilities down there. The doctors that were, the hometown doctors have been able to, increase their clientele, bring in other new doctors. They have these, beautiful state-of-the-art medical facilities right in town. There is a Walmart. There is even a Kohl's. There's a Starbucks. But there's also still the small town businesses in there. And it really, all of that though, really is at the center of Clinton City. And there still is agriculture all around it. There's still a beautiful walking trail that goes along the old railroad. And I was there a few weeks ago, and I made a comment to my friend. We both grew up there together. She still lives there and has raised her family there. How much we wish that we had grown up in this Clinton, how much she enjoys raising her children there, because they don't have to leave Clinton to do anything. They really can they can go to the doctor there. They can go to the schools there. They can go to the parks there. They can do Christmas shopping there. They can do everything right there in town, but they can still go to the farm stands. They can still, there's still the agriculture around the outskirts of it, and it's just all there. So anyway, it can happen. I've seen it, and I wish I had grown up in that Clinton. And I love Tremonton. I think that the ideas they're showing have a lot of potential, and I hope that we can still preserve the look and feel of Tremonton. But I think especially along that kind of that the west end of Main Street out by the freeway, I think there's a lot of open land out there that there's not homes out there. There's a lot of room out there that it seems that we could bring in commercial things. I remember the surveys that came out in, I think it was 2020. And I remember personally putting that in my comments, that it would be nice to have some commercial businesses out there on that west end by the freeway that isn't taking away from what the heart of the city looks like over here. But we don't have to go to Brigham or Logan, because frankly, they probably don't want us intruding their towns either. They'd probably like if we had our own stores.
Oh, they'll take our money.
Yeah, tax dollars.
But they get busy too. So it'd be nice to keep some of it here at home too. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
An interesting case study. I've seen some.
Any other comments?
Where?
Anyone?
I'm gonna have to look at Clinton.
Yeah, me
closer,
too.
yeah.
We'll look closer.
That's a really interesting case study.
Michelle Martineau, and I just have a quick comment that, as he was talking about parks and recreation, I think a lot of the building that's coming in is gonna
be towards young families and young people, and I'd like to see that up closer to where Brigham City is, or nationwide 10, so our children have a place to go and recreate. And, you know, I know he talked about a lot of open space here, and he, you know, can go out. I have that ability, I can, but not everybody has the ability to, you know, have the resources to go out of town and enjoy places with their families where, you know, they don't have the resources and they need to stay in town, and they need good places to have activities and enjoy parks and stuff. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Especially with gas, $20 a gallon.
Don't talk about that. We don't need that. Anybody else?
Just really quick, I think Sam.
State your name.
Lyle Vance,
That's Virginia.
City Councilman. So anyway, I think Sam, we talked about the 600 and some odd people that showed up at the park for free hot dogs. I mean, where there's a lot more to it that happened. I don't know how many hours we spent on the telephone, and we had, what, 40 people that were invited to the committee sessions and that type of stuff. We had landowners, we had realtors, we had we had all kinds of people involved with that discussion as we put this together. And I'm glad that, you know, that there's more people looking at it and that type of stuff. And there was also, you went to the community looking for input via the internet several different times. I mean, there was an all-out reach for input on this thing. So there's already been a lot of people looking at this thing at this point. The thing that I want to bring to light is, you know, we're working on intersections going down Main Street and that type of stuff. Is there any way we can get the whole plan put together? I mean, what we're trying to do with streets, how we're trying to grow and put it in so everybody can see what's going on, so that there are some concerns out there that I've read just recently that we're not thinking about streets and the volume of traffic and that type of stuff. They need to see that we are and have been for the last umpteen years. If we could put this in part of the plan, they can see that there is planning going on. It might alleviate some of the hubbub that's going on. Thanks.
Thanks, Lyle.
Is that in the transportation plan? It is, isn't it?
Well, there's two things. There's a transportation plan, and what we try to do is integrate. That was one of the elements of the general plan that we try to integrate into the land use plan. And so as you look at the land use plan, you'll see specifically the transportation corridors, but maybe more specifically to Lyle's point. So as part of that traffic plan that we did, we hired a transportation engineer. They created a model, you know, based upon land uses. And I think what we should do, you know, is if there are adjustments to the land use plan, then we need to take it back to the transportation engineer and have them rerun the models to show, you know, what that looks like on some of those corridors, and maybe we adjust accordingly.
Because we've actually purchased some of these intersections already for future streets, so that all needs to be part of this thing.
Yeah.
Perfect. Any other comment?
Mike Linford asked that you show a picture swap. We didn't have any words, we just wanted this picture shared.
Okay, actually, if you want me to share about that one, I will.
You might.
Okay.
Mike Linford, a resident
Oh.
of Fremont.
Yes, Mike, sure.
Can we please go to this, your presentation, Sam, and go to page roughly 82 to look at the pictures of what we don't want in Tremont?
Oh, to the draft plan, or?
Yes.
I have it here in this
Yes, to
presentation?
the draft plan.
Oh, okay. Do you have a copy of that, Cynthia?
Which one is it?
I think you're gonna have to.
We're gonna have to leave this
I
document.
think it's the appendix that has the pictures of, you know, there was a big survey done and everybody voted on what they don't want Tremont to look like.
Yeah, you're talking this one here.
Yes. Can we see that on the screen, please?
It's on page 82 of the draft plan.
Can you airdrop it?
I wish we had the water and the humidity and the growth that these pictures show. Unfortunately, I'm not sure Utah's ever
Lot
gonna
of
look like
trees.
these pictures.
That's what we were saying about the one. Is that trees? That's a lot of trees. A lot.
I mean, well, there is possible, I guess, to do some
Maybe
of
in
that.
South
but-
Weber there is.
I come from the Midwest. Once
I don't
next
know.
door is a home, you can't see
This is vision, right?
This visionary. This?
Looks this
You can see off the freeway. Everything looks
Yeah.
just
It
No.
looked like that picture.
No, that's Sadler's off between, that's Tremont and Pines. My concern about all the open space is maintaining it and making it look good and not having it be just a big weed patch that collects garbage. It's so hard when you have a big field. I mean, you know what I mean?
That's farming it.
That's feeding America, Micah.
What? Only for farming it. It's
Yeah,
a in
but
America.
one of the uses for the open space is ag. So maybe the city could actually make a little money farming it out.
Maybe. Yeah, we can see it. I've got it here if you want to speak.
Yeah, I'd like it to be up on the screen, please.
Not yet.
Yeah, it's right. Yeah, it's page 88 of the draft. Yeah, that's it.
So if you want to pause right there for a minute. So as many of you know, a survey went out to a bunch of people in the Tremont area, and they were shown a whole bunch of pictures, and they ranked the pictures on, how much they liked them or what they wanted to see and what they didn't want to see. The absolutely worst thing that they wanted to see is up there in that upper right corner. You guys all agree? City Council, everybody? That is in the report. That is in the report that Sam is basing his report on, isn't it, Sam? That is the absolute worst picture of what we want Tremont to look like. So now flip it over to that picture that I shared with you, Cynthia. Please.
But honestly, in a true survey of Tremont, and those two pictures shouldn't even have been
Left ones?
as a part of it.
So this
really.
picture right here was taken yesterday in Tremont. That looks identical to what Tremont does not want. According to your report, according to your survey. City Council just approved 1,000 of these units for Tremont. Exactly what we don't want here. Your report says it. The people said it.
Well,
Problem is-
unfortunately, people have to have somewhere to live.
Say that's what some people can afford
Yeah, that's
that.
a big joke, isn't it? It's pretty funny, man. Let's just
Oh,
break the hell out of Tremont.
That's what some people can. That's all they can afford. Some people.
Hey, let's bring
Yeah,
this to order. We're not here to bash and go. Let's end that.
All right.
Your comment.
Well, don't laugh at what I'm saying then.
I'm not laughing at what you're
I'm serious
saying.
about this.
Understand.
That's exactly what Tremont said they don't want, and that's exactly what you all just approved.
I have one question for you. So somebody who works in Tremont, they make 30, 40, 50 grand a year. Where do we put them? Where can they live?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what? I'm not against apartments, and I'm not against multi-housing. It just doesn't need to be so dense like that right there. Where's the open space? If you had a kid in there,
Behind it. There's a
oh
park.
no, the other side is just as bad.
No, there's a park. There's a
No,
park.
there's not. On the other side of both of these units, there's a street. This is exactly practically the picture that Tremont said they don't want.
Well, yeah, that's the hard part is it's just an affordability problem. And unfortunately, the way the world is and the way costs are, most people can't afford a traditional home with lots of open space and lots of yard.
He completely disagree. And people don't need big houses and big yards. I mean, they can have multifamily setups.
Yeah.
But just not this density and that type of sprawl.
Well, maybe you should be a developer and you should develop those things that you're visualizing and put out there and build them.
That's exactly, yeah, I'm not surprised that you're saying something like that.
Yeah, well, because if you've got the vision, let's
Yeah.
do it. I think it'll be great.
We understand.
We have the vision. Tremont shared the vision of what they want, and this isn't what they're getting.
And I think we're missing the point. What we're talking about is developing that vision and going here forward. No one can go back in time and take this stuff down. You know, I mean, do you start inviting people to leave or what? You have to manage it. I don't think Tremont is the only place growing. I think everything around us is growing. And what we need to do is manage that, guide it. So we share a lot of your frustrations and a lot of your beliefs that you're expressing. But you also have, I mean, this is part of why we're wanting to develop this draft and get a shared vision to improve our plan. You also have the problem of if something is zoned for this and you apply for building permit, there's no one here who can legally say no. Whether we like it or not, you can't say no to that. And there's a lot of these that have come about just that simple. And so the best thing we can do is look at this plan that we're talking about reviewing, and if there's some areas in town that are zoned for high density and we don't like it, then as a community, we need to unzone it for that. But if someone comes in and applies for a building permit for that permitted use, you can't say no.
Well, no, and I agree with that completely.
So,
Completely, but what
oh,
we're
well,
doing,
let me finish.
we're
You've done a lot of
annexing
yelling at us, and I'd like to finish.
Rezoning whatever.
Okay.
I mean, I'm all about, let's have, the land use manual.
And we need to have the conversations and some civility, but coming in and telling us that we did all this to Tremont and that is not productive, it's counterproductive.
Who approved all this?
I can't answer that. But, it's some of that debate that's been going on in town. I found it interesting. There was a couple people that were against the growth and the density. You were engaged with them. The irony was, some of them were farmers who had sold their land for development. So let's come together as a community. Let's find some common ground to work through this problem. The divisiveness and the sophistry and the slinging doesn't help. We need your input and ideas. You need us to understand and work with those. That's what we're talking about. That's why they've invested this money in this gentleman and his firm, so we can have a shared vision plan. If we don't like this, let's come together as a community. That's what we're talking about. Let's not do any more. That's what we can
I
do.
agree, and I would
That's what we can
suggest
do.
stop any permits until we get this plan in place.
No, we can't do that.
You can't do it.
The vision here is it may be a situation where maybe somebody doesn't like your home, maybe somebody doesn't like my home. It doesn't matter. There's changing, and everybody can do their own unique thing with their own property. And our job is to try to figure out how to do that. And that's what he mentioned, is we can put controls in there architecturally and open space and different things that we can try to make it better. But we also have to understand that all of our children have to have a place to live. And right now, the landscape has changed, and a starter home is $500,000 or close to it. And it's going to have to be more multifamily housing, just how it's going to have to be. So your time's up. I appreciate your comment. I would entertain a motion to adjourn unless you had other comments or questions.
Thank you.
I make a motion to adjourn.
A motion, you have a second? All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
It was an interesting comment about
Jordan did, I second
even taking that land use plan, putting it, giving it back.
That was good.